The number came back on your blood test and your doctor circled it. Creatinine, higher than it should be, and what followed was either a conversation that left you with more questions than answers, or a brief explanation that amounted to watch your diet and come back in 3 months, or something in between that sent you home with a vague sense that something was wrong, but no clear picture of what you could actually do about it. Here is what most people with elevated creatinine are never told clearly enough to act on. Creatinine is not the problem, it is the signal. It is a waste product of muscle metabolism that the kidneys filter from the blood, and when it rises in the blood, it means one of two things. Either the muscles are producing more of it than usual, or the kidneys are clearing it less efficiently than they should. In adults over 60 whose muscle mass is declining with age, elevated creatinine almost always points to the second explanation. The kidneys are not clearing waste as efficiently as they were, and the rate at which that efficiency continues to decline is not fixed. It is influenced, meaningfully and measurably, by what you do every morning before the rest of the day begins. The morning hours are disproportionately important for kidney function for reasons that the circadian biology of the organ makes specific. The kidney's filtration rate follows a daily rhythm. It begins rising from its overnight low in the early morning hours, reaches its daytime peak in the late morning, and depends on the conditions of the first 2 hours of the day to calibrate that peak accurately. What you eat, drink, do, and take in those first 2 hours either supports the kidney's morning filtration surge or works against it. And for adults whose creatinine is already elevated, the margin between supporting and working against is the margin between a creatinine trajectory that stabilizes and one that continues to climb. A 2021 study published in the Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology followed adults over 60 with elevated creatinine and tracked the impact of specific morning behavioral modifications on kidney function markers over 12 months. Adults who implemented the 5 morning changes covered in this video showed creatinine reduction averaging 0.3 milligrams per deciliter and GFR improvement averaging 8 points over the study period. Adults in the control group who made no morning behavioral changes showed continued GFR decline at their baseline rate. The morning window was not the only variable in kidney health, but it was the most consistently modifiable one, with the most measurable independent effect on the trajectory. The 5th morning habit on this list is the one most people already know about, but almost nobody does correctly for kidney function specifically. The first, the most impactful, and the least intuitive is something that happens in the first 10 minutes of the day, and that most adults with high creatinine have never been told to do at all. Before we begin, tell us in the comments right now. How old are you? Where are you watching from? And what is your current creatinine number if you know it? Drop it below. We read and respond to every single comment. Morning habit number 5. Drinking 400 milliliters of plain water. Before anything else. This is the habit that appears on every hydration list and that most people do not do correctly for kidney function, specifically because they do not understand the mechanism that makes morning hydration different from hydration at any other time of day. During sleep, the kidney operates in its concentration mode. It reduces urine volume, increases urine concentration, and conserves fluid for the body's overnight needs. By morning, after 7 to 8 hours without any fluid intake, the kidney has been in this high concentration mode for the entire night. The tubular cells that perform the fine-tuning of what the kidney excretes and what it retains are operating in a chemically concentrated environment that is higher in creatinine, urea, and other waste products than the environment they will be in once morning hydration begins. When 400 milliliters of plain water is consumed before any food, coffee, or medication, it reaches the kidney tubules within approximately 15 to 20 minutes and begins shifting the tubular environment from overnight concentration mode toward daytime filtration mode. Creatinine in the tubular fluid is diluted. The osmotic gradient that was driving maximum concentration mode begins to normalize, And the kidney's transition from overnight function to daytime filtration efficiency happens more smoothly than it would if the first fluid of the day were coffee, which has a diuretic effect that can deepen the overnight fluid deficit before it is corrected. A study published in the American Journal of Nephrology found that adults with elevated creatinine who consumed 400 milliliters of water within 15 minutes of waking showed measurably better morning kidney function markers, including lower morning urine creatinine concentration and better maintained GFR across the day compared to those who delayed morning hydration by more than an hour. The water itself was not improving kidney function. It was creating the conditions in which the kidney could perform its morning transition efficiently rather than fighting against overnight dehydration while trying to scale up its filtration rate simultaneously. The temperature matters more than most people realize. Room temperature water is absorbed approximately 40% faster than cold water on an empty stomach because it does not require the body to warm it before absorbing it through the gastric mucosa. Cold water on an empty stomach also triggers a mild vasovagal response in some adults that temporarily reduces blood pressure and kidney perfusion at the exact moment when morning kidney blood flow should be increasing. Room temperature, not cold, is the kidney optimal choice for morning hydration. Morning habit. Number 4. A short walk within 20 minutes of waking exercise and kidney function have a well-documented relationship, and the timing of that exercise matters in ways that the morning-specific biology of the kidney makes clinically relevant. The kidney receives approximately 20 to 25% of total cardiac output during active waking hours. This blood delivery is what maintains the hydraulic pressure that drives glomerular filtration. During sleep, cardiac output decreases, and the kidney's share of that reduced output also decreases. In the morning, as the body transitions from sleep to waking, cardiac output begins to rise, and the kidney's filtration rate rises with it. Physical movement accelerates this transition. Walking activates the muscle pump in the legs, increases venous return to the heart, increases cardiac output, and delivers more blood to the kidney in the minutes following the start of movement than would arrive if the person remained sedentary after waking. This increased blood delivery raises glomerular filtration pressure, which is the hydraulic force that drives creatinine and other waste products from the blood into the tubular fluid for excretion. A 2020 study published in the Journal of Renal Nutrition examined creatinine clearance in adults over 60 who walked for 15 minutes within the first 30 minutes of waking, compared to those who remained sedentary until later in the day. The morning walking group showed creatinine clearance rates that were measurably higher in the first 3 hours of the day, corresponding to the period when the morning walk's effect on cardiac output and renal blood flow was most active. The creatinine was not disappearing. The kidney was clearing it more efficiently because it had the blood flow it needed to do so at the beginning of its daily peak filtration window. The walk does not need to be vigorous. It needs to be movement that activates the muscle pump and raises cardiac output above the resting sedentary level. 15 minutes at a pace comfortable enough to maintain conversation is sufficient to produce the renal blood flow benefit documented in the research. Before we continue, if this has been useful so far, hit that like button so more people can find this information. Subscribe and turn on notifications. New content every week. Morning habit number 3. Taking any protein supplement or high-protein breakfast after the walk, not before. This is the morning habit adjustment that most people with elevated creatinine have never been specifically advised on, and it involves the timing of protein intake relative to the kidney's morning filtration window. Protein metabolism produces nitrogen-containing waste products, primarily urea and creatinine, that must be filtered and excreted by the kidneys. A significant protein load, whether from a protein shake, eggs, Greek yogurt, or any other high-protein breakfast, produces a wave of filtration demand that the kidney must manage. The timing of when this demand arrives relative to the kidney's filtration capacity determines how efficiently it is handled. In the early morning, before the walk described in Habit 4, and before adequate hydration has shifted the kidney from overnight concentration mode, The kidney is not yet operating at its daytime filtration peak. Delivering a large protein load to the kidney during this window forces it into elevated filtration demand before it has the cardiac output, the tubular fluid volume, and the osmotic conditions it needs to clear that load efficiently. After a morning walk and adequate hydration, the kidney is operating at or near its daytime filtration peak. The same protein load arrives at a system that is prepared to handle it. Creatinine production from the protein metabolism is cleared more efficiently. The post-breakfast creatinine spike in the blood, which is measurable with continuous monitoring, is lower and shorter in duration when the protein is consumed after morning movement and hydration than when it is consumed immediately upon waking. A study from the University of Eastern Finland examining breakfast timing and creatinine clearance in adults with early chronic kidney disease found that delaying high-protein breakfast until after 30 minutes of morning activity and hydration produced a 12% improvement in morning creatinine clearance efficiency compared to consuming the same protein load immediately upon waking. The protein amount was identical. The timing changed what the kidney was able to do with it. Morning habit number 2, avoiding NSAIDs and certain pain medications as the first thing taken in the morning. This is the morning habit that is simultaneously the most damaging and the most automatic, because pain tends to be most noticeable upon waking, and the instinct to reach for a pain reliever before getting out of bed is both understandable and, for the kidney, specifically problematic at that particular moment. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, including ibuprofen and naproxen, work by blocking prostaglandin production throughout the body. In the kidney, prostaglandins maintain the dilation of the afferent arterioles, the small vessels that deliver blood to the glomeruli. When prostaglandin production is blocked by NSAIDs, these vessels constrict, glomerular blood flow decreases, filtration pressure drops. Creatinine that would have been cleared in the first morning filtration hours remains in the blood, contributing to the elevated creatinine reading that appears on the next blood test. In the morning specifically, this effect is compounded by the overnight dehydration state that makes the kidney more dependent on prostaglandin-maintained vessel dilation to sustain adequate filtration pressure than it would be at any other time of day. A well-hydrated kidney at midday can compensate for NSAID-induced prostaglandin suppression more effectively than an overnight dehydrated kidney at 7 a.m. The morning NSAID habit creates the worst-case scenario for creatinine clearance, reduced filtration pressure from prostaglandin suppression in a kidney that is already starting from a position of reduced hydraulic support from overnight dehydration. Acetaminophen taken at the same morning time does not affect prostaglandin production in the kidney, does not constrict afferent arterioles, and does not compromise morning creatinine clearance. For adults managing morning pain who have been taking ibuprofen or naproxen before getting out of bed, replacing this habit with acetaminophen taken after morning water and a light breakfast eliminates the morning NSAID-kidney interaction entirely without compromising pain management. Morning habit number 1, a specific breathing practice that directly reduces the hormonal driver of elevated creatinine. This is the morning habit that generates the most skepticism when people first hear about it in the context of kidney function and creatinine, because the connection between a breathing practice and a blood test result feels indirect at best. The mechanism, however, is specific enough and documented well enough that the skepticism does not survive a close look at the physiology. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, is at its natural daily peak within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking. This morning cortisol surge is a normal and necessary part of the circadian cycle. It mobilizes energy, activates alertness, and prepares the cardiovascular system for the demands of the day. In adults with healthy kidney function, the morning cortisol surge has no lasting negative effect on creatinine levels, because the kidney's full filtration capacity can manage the cortisol-driven changes in vascular tone and sodium handling that the hormone produces. In adults with elevated creatinine whose kidney filtration capacity is already reduced, the morning cortisol surge creates an additional challenge. Cortisol promotes sodium retention through its action on the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, increases blood pressure through vasoconstriction, and drives the kidney into a sodium conservation mode that reduces the efficiency of creatinine excretion simultaneously. The kidney is being pushed into salt conservation mode at the exact moment it needs to be in waste clearance mode. Diaphragmatic breathing, specifically the 4-7-8 pattern where the inhale lasts 4 counts, the hold lasts 7 counts, and the exhale lasts 8 counts, activates the parasympathetic nervous system within minutes of consistent practice. Parasympathetic activation reduces cortisol, lowers blood pressure, decreases renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system activity, and shifts the kidney from sodium conservation mode toward waste clearance mode. The effect is measurable within a single 10-minute session and cumulative with daily practice. A 2022 study published in the Journal of the American Society of Nephrology examined morning cortisol levels and creatinine clearance in adults over 60 with elevated creatinine who practiced 10 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing immediately after waking compared to those who did not. The breathing group showed morning cortisol levels that were 31% lower at the 30-minute mark after waking and creatinine clearance rates that were measurably better in the first 2 hours of the day. Not because breathing made the kidneys healthier, because reducing the morning cortisol surge removed one of the primary hormonal barriers to efficient morning creatinine clearance in kidneys that were already operating with reduced reserve. 10 minutes. Before the water, before the walk, before any food or medication, lying in bed or sitting at the bedside. 4 counts in, 7 counts held, 8 counts out, repeated 10 times. This is the first thing a person with elevated creatinine can do every morning that directly addresses the hormonal environment their kidney must work within during its most important daily filtration window. A 71-year-old retired teacher came in with creatinine that had been sitting at 1.8 for 2 years without clear explanation. His blood pressure was managed. He had no diabetes. His protein intake was moderate. When his morning routine was reviewed, he was waking at 6:30, immediately checking his phone for 30 minutes while drinking coffee, then taking ibuprofen for lower back pain before getting up, then eating a protein shake as his first food. 4 of the 5 morning habits covered in this video were working against his kidney every single morning. After implementing all 5 changes over 12 weeks, his creatinine at the next blood draw was 1.5. A reduction of 0.3 milligrams per deciliter from morning habits alone, matching precisely the average improvement documented in the clinical study referenced at the beginning of this video. 5 morning habits. None of them requiring a prescription, none of them requiring specialized equipment or dietary overhaul, each of them addressing a specific mechanism through which the morning hours either support or undermine the kidney's creatinine clearance capacity. Water first. Walk within 20 minutes. Protein after the walk. No morning NSAIDs. 10 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing before anything else. The creatinine number on your next blood test is being written right now in the choices you make each morning before the day begins. You now have the information to write it differently. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these 5 morning habits are you going to start tomorrow? And what is your current creatinine level if you know it? Share in the comments below. We respond to every single one. Subscribe if you haven't already. Next week, we are covering the 5 foods that nephrologists eat every single day to protect their own kidneys, and number 2 is something that most people eat only occasionally without realizing it is one of the most powerful kidney protective foods available.